Hello and welcome to another Sonic Labs special. Today, as is often the case, we get together with Gaz and look at Steinberg products because you've been a long-time user of Cubase and various other Steinberg products. And today we're looking at HALion 6, which is a kind of fairly, well, what would you describe it as, Gaz?
Well, I mean, HALion is, gosh, been with us for nearly 20 years now. HALion or HALion, it's a bit of a Moog thing there. But I think we'll probably call it HALion here. But was one of the first software samplers, wasn't it? It's been around for a very long time. So I think when people hear that name, I think you tend to think of it as a sampler. And yes, it is a sampler, but it's a whole lot more than that as well.
So HALion 6 came out towards the beginning of the year, wasn't it, I believe?
Yeah.
So we're a bit late, but it's very deep, and we should add.
It's taken us that long just to kind of get to the bottom of, well, and I still only feel like a scratch in the surface on there. But yes, so essentially it's a VST or AAX or AU plugin, or as we've got it here, you can run it as a standalone.
Right.
So you could use it as your keyboard rig for live or a multitude of uses of it. But I mean, looking at the screen, what we'll see, or the first thing that we'll kind of see is kind of
multi-window type of thing.
Yes. And I think we'll just explain it a little bit, just as a little overview of the screen now. So on the left-hand side, we see our rack there, and that's kind of...
That's kind of your slots, isn't it? This, I mean, it's the common to kind of UVI, it's common to contact. You know, it's like you drop something in there, and that is an instance of something, right?
Right. And in sort of HALion parlance, we'll call each one of those is like a program. But what a program kind of consists of can be many elements. So when you load it in, the default, it loads in with this patch called Hexagon, which Nick will demonstrate. Okay.
Which has got a load of layers. It's obviously got an arpeggiator, clock-based thing, so it's got all of the tempo sync. There's a play button up there, so you can run clocks and record phrases and all sorts of stuff. Right?
Absolutely, yeah. And just to explore what the constitutes of this program called Hexagon is, we'll come to the center panel here, and I'm going to click on macro. And when I click on macro, we can see that Hexagon consists of different modules. So we've got an Anima module, which Anima is like a wavetable module, and we've got Skylab, which is more like a kind of granular-y thing, and we've got Studio Strings. Now, Studio Strings is one of the new things which is in HALion 6, which is a big string library.
Yeah, we should say it comes with, what, 25, 26 gigs of
it comes a lot
of content, right?
Yeah. Well, and okay, so jumping back then, if we come back to here, we've got, now this centerpiece here, this is the media browser, and this will be immediately familiar to the people who are familiar with Steinberg's other products like Cubase and stuff. And the top part there is a category browser. But if we click on this bit here, we can actually get an overview of the various modules. So for instance, the Studio Strings that we just looked at, if I was to select Studio Strings, then, and let's just, it then gives us
all those patches,
all the patches within the Studio
And it's
Strings.
the same sort of tagging and categorising that you find in lots of big sample libraries, right? Similar sort of deal.
Yeah, exactly. So come back here again. So again, we're looking at the different modules then, and two big things now. There's two multi-sampled pianos in here, Raven and Eagle, which very nice multi-sampled pianos. But if you're interested in just that side of things, then there's a sister product to HALion 6, which is called HALion Sonic, and that's HALion Sonic version 3 now. It's essentially the same content, but without the ability to kind of
get quite so deep. Because I mean, the thing about HALion 6 is there are several new features, which what they allow you to do is to create kind of user content, so you can design your own stuff, which will hopefully show you a little bit, scratch the surface of that a little bit later. But if you're not into all of that, HALion Sonic, it's about 80 quid less, isn't it, if you're buying the full thing?
Yeah,
so.
But it comes with, an enormous library, so you've got your orchestral sounds, your, organs, pianos, synths galore, so, pretty big. But we're not particularly going to look at that side of stuff now.
I mean, we could flip through presets for hours, couldn't we?
Yeah, but we're going to skip from that. So what we are going to do, though, is we're going to, well, if any sampler worth its salt, really, you've got to kind of see how easy is it to actually sample.
Oh yeah, but before you do, you were just going to explain the programs and layers on the right-hand side. We got sidetracked as ever.
Yeah. So okay. So anyway, so let's actually look at that now a little bit. So as we look now, in the right-hand side, we've got a program bus, but we haven't got anything actually in there. It's just like an
just
empty
a container,
thing.
right.
Yeah. So what we'll do, though, is there's a recorder here.
Because you can sample directly into it as well.
You can, yes. So because we're running this standalone, we've set up the audio interface to do that, but otherwise there is a pathway through the DAW.
I should point out the reason that we've got an iPad here is it's just mirroring the screen. It's not
Yeah.
doing any actual physical stuff
good,
other
good
than...
point.
Yeah.
But you see, so from our like load rec tab, we've just come to the recorder. So this recorder is just a very quick way to be able to put samples in.
Yeah. And we've got, you'd probably not be able to see, but there's a ribbon mic here just plugged directly into the UR22 interface that we got, right?
Yeah, that's right. So what I've got here is...
Good Lord. King Arthur or something. Or Sir Gawain.
This is an wand. And...
Yes, that was from, we first saw this, if you're a fan of the podcast, Mark Tinley, who runs a store in Glastonbury. Sonismagus.com. A bloke in Glastonbury makes these things.
Yeah.
What does it do, Gaz?
Well, it's sort of like a...
It's like one of those spinny things, but it's, yeah. Okay, so we're going to use that for something, are we?
Yeah, well, I think this thing is just, you know, designed to be sampled, really. I mean, I don't know what else you could use it for particularly. But, okay, so very simply, Voodoo VR1 going into the UR22, and that's set up to be our audio interface. Now, I'm going to come down here, trigger. I'm going to set it to be, like, this could be manual, so you could just press start and stop. But I'm going to set it with audio threshold, minus 20 dB, so, yeah, minus 50. And that should...
So now it'll auto-record.
It'll auto-record. So when it's, like, let's just see if that works now. So I'm going to put it into record.
You are a master of the wand, Gaz. So now we've got that sample in there.
Yeah.
So what happens now?
Okay. So in our empty program, we're going to, it's appeared now as a sort of a recording. So this is cool. So I'm going to click on the little tab called Edit. And now we can see in our sample editor here, the sample.
Right.
So first thing I'm going to do is just normalize that first.
Yep.
And we could crop that and various other things, but that's okay.
Let's not worry about
we don't
that
need to
for
do
now,
that. But what I'm going to do is in sound, I'm going to turn it in, this is zone type. I'm going to make this zone type.
So can I play this now?
Yeah, and actually it's identified it as a D sharp.
So if I press D sharp?
Yeah. But what we might want to do is we might want to sort of put it across the whole keyboard. And the way we'd do that is we'd come over in the right-hand side here and we can say fill gaps. So fill gaps, pitch and velocity. This will then just
give you a key.
Map it across the whole keyboard now.
Interesting.
Yeah,
okay.
we could set it to a time stretch, so it'll play the same thing.
Right, so it does all of that usual stuff.
Yeah, but what we're going to do here though is we're going to actually we're going to bring it into the new wavetable editor.
Right, this is one of the new features in HALion 6, right?
Yeah, yeah. And the way we do that then is we're going to come to this little bit here, and it says zone type. So we'll talk more about zones in a moment, but I'm going to change the zone type to wavetable. So that's changed this now from. Some of the parts are still the same, but it's changed this center.
And this seems to be in a kind of what seems to be a kind of standard subtractive synth voice as well. So you've got filters, amplitude envelopes, and all that kind of stuff, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, and LFOs and all sorts of things.
There's a lot of depth to this stuff.
There is.
I mean, the one thing I will say, it is quite dense, this interface, isn't it?
It is. I mean, you can resize, and each of the modules you can close, and at the top here there's a little bit here which lets you save the screen set and get to a default screen set and that sort of thing. So it's eminently customizable.
Right, okay.
So yes, it is dense, but it, you know, the more you use it, I guess the more you would personalize it.
Right, so the wavetable.
Yeah, so now in the wavetable, at the moment, there's just only one marker, so essentially the whole thing is like playing as one. But I think it's good to add quite a lot of markers in here. So I'm going to put 100 in.
Okay.
So essentially this is making 100
oscillators. 100 slices.
Yeah, 100 slices, so like so.
Oh, right, okay.
A few other things that we could do. I'm going to normalize the slices so that each slice is equal volume, yeah. I could choose sequence, which would sort of preserve the relative relationship of the different ones. But now we can see, and as we pan along here, we can see all our wave.
What happens if I play then? It's going to sequence through them. Is that
Yeah,
right?
try it.
Interesting. Okay.
Yep. And we used equal distance to set the slices, but we could choose it spectral, where it will kind of move the slices based on the kind of pitch. There's various ways, but what we'll do is we'll keep it on that for the moment, and I'm going to go back over to sound, and then here we've got a load of parameters that can adjust the wavetable. We can do a load of funky things. Like for instance, one of the things which I really like is to enable multi-oscillator.
Right.
Okay. So at the moment this is just only playing one version of it, but let's just add a whole bunch of them. And I'm going to put a bit of detune as well.
Just dial that back a bit. Okay, interesting.
And we can see the wavetable now. Oh, you know, in a little.
Yeah, you got that right.
And if we flick back to the wavetable browser, it actually lets us look at it with a 3D map.
Oh,
It's quite fun.
So that's a fairly sort of unaffected raw sound.
Yeah.
Is there anything we can do to kind of change the tonal characteristics of that? You mentioned something. Did I see formant shift in there somewhere?
Yeah, let's do that. But before we do that, I just got the speed control here, so we can make the scanning through the wavetable slower. So, and you can see how the 3D. So if I speed it up.
Yeah, slower is nicer, isn't it?
Slow is nicer with this, isn't it? You're getting that benefit of the wavetable evolving qualities.
It's hard to think that started where it did. But
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, so we'll come back to this here. Yes, so I'm going to enable formant shift. And if you hold the note, I'm going to change the formant. Because I changed the formant.
Oh, that's nice.
So this,
Almost filter-like quality.
yeah.
Can we map that to like a?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So I'll assign it to quick control 1.
Right.
Not come down the bottom here now.
You can see that. It's
And what
labelled.
we haven't actually done.
Oh, right. So
yeah. So if I just learn. Okay. So you've got that mapped on there now.
Oh, right. Okay. Can we add a bit of release to it?
Yeah, sure. So if I scroll down here, we've got all sorts of, like, yeah, stuff that you'll be familiar with. Is that enough?
Yeah, nice.
Cool.
So, I mean, that's quite nice. I mean, so now, I mean, what that would probably be really good to have something behind it. Like, can we put like a synth tone or something behind it?
Yeah. Okay, so that brings us to this element I mentioned about zones and layers as well. So you can sort of think about it a little bit like...
I mean, I guess there's two ways we could do this. You could drop another a synth program into another slot.
Yes.
Or this way.
I think this way is cool because we start to see how the benefit of this building programs can be. So what I'm going to do though is I'm going to add a layer, and I'm going to move our recording so far into this layer. So now I'm going to add a second layer. So that second layer is still sharing the same sort of path, but this layer now, I mentioned about zones. So the zones in this second layer, I'm going to add another zone. So the first zone we've used is like a wavetable zone.
Right.
So the second zone we're going to do from this here, you see that's our choice. Synth zone, sample zone, granular zone.
Synth Zone. Our friends over at synthzone.com will be very happy. They might want to talk to their lawyers.
Organ zone. And organ zone's cool, so it's kind of like a kind of draw bars and things. Granular zone, which I really like too. But we're going to go with synth zone. And the synth zone essentially gives us a big...
Okay, it seems like it needs to be tuned because obviously we've got a D sharp.
Okay, so let's have a look at that then. So with the fine tune?
Sounds like it's going to be a tone down. One more. There we go.
Nice.
So now we've just got that's just a basic sine wave.
Yeah, and So this thing here, this kind of shows you just how much stuff's in here. This is like, you know, we've got 3 oscillators,
Wow, okay.
a 3 oscillator synth.
So I mean, you can build kind of all sorts of crazy stuff. Can you just turn the level of that down a tiny bit, the
Yeah.
wave, and maybe add a little bit of modulation? Would that be something that you could do on the fly, Gaz?
Yeah. Okay, let's just put the modulation in first. So we've got an LFO, so I'm going to come to the mod matrix. So it's got its own mod matrix in here. LFO1 pitch.
Yep. Make it about 0.25 because I know sometimes the range gets a bit.
0.25. Okay.
Yeah, that's a nice bit.
Yeah. So if I
Can you turn the tone down a little bit?
Yeah.
And I can still tinker with that formant shift as well.
Bringing down the individual oscillators, but
Yeah. What about some reverb on that?
sure. So if we come up now, this brings us up to our little mixer. So this mixer gives us.
Wow, you can have up to, I think it's up to 32 stereo pairs if you've got the audio hardware to support it. So they're probably working this as, you know, you might be using this as the basis of your massive orchestral rig, possibly, as a sort of B machine if you're a composer, or something that you might be using live where you need lots of multiple outputs, right?
Yeah, and I mean, this is where this flexibility.
Yeah, it's starting to get like, okay.
Yeah.
Deep.
So yeah, I'll just chuck this across the masters then, and I'll put in an instance of reverence. So reverence is again familiar to Cubase users. Excellent reverb.
Okay, it's starting to get quite vibey, that. So presumably we can save all of this as a preset now, right?
That's right, yeah. So within our program manager at the top here, you know, I can hit my save program, and now it's got an option here to
Right, so author, category, yeah, that's when you get into the tagging and all that sort of thing.
Yes.
So that's your sort of program layer and stuff. I mean, if we go back to the, I mean, this looks very vanilla. I mean, we go back to some of those other instruments, they've got very sort of unique pages and the way that the interface looks, like
Yeah.
if we maybe add another slot and we can see what that looks like. So,
okay, so we'll bring another program in here, and then on this program we'll go load rec, and then sort of
right, so
we could pick one of these things. Like for instance, like let's say the studio strings. Let's bring in the Arco strings, for example.
and that's like a custom interface, effectively.
Yes, and what's very, very cool with this is that although these things come bundled with it, you can make your own interfaces.
So if we went back to our on one, we could get a graphic and add knobs to control specific parameters.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. And I mean, things start getting more complicated now.
Yeah, I mean, this is getting into real. I guess this is the thing where we found when we were looking at it. We were trying to figure all this stuff out before we started filming, and it wasn't immediately obvious because it's so deep. But essentially, you can create something that has your own look and feel. Import your own bitmap, add knobs, add drop-down menus, whatever.
You know, and that's right. With these tabs here, if we were to click on the plus here, we can add various things to our sort of editor area here, including, so we were talking about macro page designer. Right. So if I was to go into that, we won't go into this in full detail because it's huge. Just, but basically here, you can import.
And the thing that we found is also this can work with. It doesn't have to be samples. It could be you could just be using the synth engine and figure out all sorts of routings and modulation and create your own kind of skin effectively for a synth set.
Yeah.
But the thing that makes it really interesting is, again with HALion 6, is you can then export that as a standalone VST sound library file which will include the samples if there are any, and the interface and the macros. And there's also some very powerful scripting, which is way above what we could do. But you've got to sort of think maybe in terms of contact. But you can export that, and then you could play that into HALion Sonic 3, which is the free player.
SE.
SE, sorry. Yeah. And we did that.
Yeah.
And we ran it on my computer. We exported it to a USB after tinkering. I mean, it's a very vague attempt at it, but it's true. So with that sound we made, we can drag it over export it into a format, and then load it on another machine. And
well, and this isn't just a preset. This could be, if we made a whole library of on one sounds, you could then either distribute it for free or
sell it. Because as far as I can tell, there's no licensing issues here. You buy the full version of HALion 6, and therefore then you end up with the ability to author this stuff.
Yes.
And it works on AU, VST, AAX.
Yeah.
So, I think that seems to be a kind of quite understated aspect to this new HALion 6. It creates a kind of content authorship platform that allows you to maybe build your own instruments, export them, sell them as self-contained things, and design interface and scripting and all that. And that was what really kind of pricked my ears up.
Yeah, and just to reiterate, that interface, you can bring in your own graphics so it could look completely bespoke, so we could have a photo of the on one, But yeah, so that is quite a unique feature.
That's a biggie, actually, I think.
Yeah. And it does kind of lead us on to something which, it's not really a criticism of HALion 6, but it's more of just, to get the most out of it, you're really going to have to put some time in.
Yeah.
Because this is a very sophisticated, very, multifaceted piece of software. In fact, it sort of is less of just a software sampler as more...
It's like an authoring platform.
Authoring platform, yeah. Indeed. And as we mentioned at the top of this little feature, that if you are only more interested in the sound, then maybe look to the HALion Sonic version of it. But the full-blown HALion 6 is like,
I mean, if you're perhaps looking to make, your own content, and you need to distribute it, because the thing about Contact, you can make your own Contact instruments, but without going into the competition too much, to get it compiled into a separate player, you have to pay a license fee. And with this is built in. So, I mean, I'm not suggesting for a minute that they're going to start, the floodgates will open, but it's worth considering if you're a content creator, and it may be possible, for you to distribute your content or your creativity in a way that you haven't been able to up to now.
And if you're a Cubase user, you will feel very much at home with the media bay. And I should mention as well, if you are using it inside of Cubase, there's a whole load of interconnectivity, how you can sort of go between the other software synths within Cubase with Groove Agent SE. There's a lot of kind of joined up thinking there.
So just coming back to this, obviously we've got our OM sound. Is there a way we could just set up a basic split and maybe put a piano or a string or something in the other hand?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So the way we would do that, we've got a string loaded in here already. So if we put that on the same MIDI channel,
right?
And now we've got this. If I come to our little MIDI browser, we've got a little keyboard there, and I just simply go set the low key. Yep. Set the high key. Oh, sorry. Yep, high key. Yeah, and then for the strings, low key, and then high key. Okay, so we've got one key, the same as C, but actually I could just step that up there.
Okay. So now that I've still got my mapping.
Yeah.
Turn the strings down a bit?
Yeah.
Right, so, I mean, at a basic level, we've got a basic keyboard split. that works fine, but you can set up multiples of these. I mean, I don't know if there's any limit to the number of actual slots you can put in there, but I would imagine, that's going to give you plenty of options. And obviously, you can create those kind of levels of splits in a slot at a program level as well, and layers
too. Yeah.
Right. Okay.
So so that is this is a classic of going down the rabbit hole type of piece of software, really, in terms of just you can go as far. You're going to run out of ideas before you run into limitations in the software,
And again, this is running. Does all this functionality is the same if you're running within a kind of plugin host as well?
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
So I guess you could drag audio clips and regions and stuff.
And that's one of the advantages of doing it inside of Cubase, because you can
so
just grab, you can grab it from actually within the software itself, out of the arrange window.
Yeah, it's kind of like the thing you might need a degree in HALion. but I mean, that's the thing. It is very deep.
Yeah.
And that's both the positive and a negative. But if you're not interested in going so deep, then again, you could go for just HALion Sonic, right?
Yeah. Again, that's the thing about if you're more of a content creator than HALion 6. More of just if you're just more of a musician side of
just want to access the libraries.
Yes.
And you can buy content and libraries via the Steinberg store and add to that, and increase the whole thing. So the pricing, that's something I was interested in, because what's HALion 6 run at?
So HALion 6 is £282.
Right, that's a sort of, I want it, I haven't got anything, and there's various different upgrade paths.
There's loads of upgrade paths, so depending if you've already got any HALion or HALion Sonic products, then go to the website and see what's
and it's about 25, 26 gigabytes of content download.
That's right, yeah. And then similar size content is the HALion Sonic, which is version 3. So
it's a bit of a confusing nomenclature, isn't it?
Because HALion's been around longer than HALion Sonic. So HALion's on 6, HALion Sonic's on version 3. But they are...
marketing nightmare.
Yeah.
Right.
But the library's more... I think there's a slightly bigger library with HALion 6.
And it's worth saying you don't get as many outputs. You can't access as many hardware outputs in HALion Sonic, and you don't get multi-screen.
Yeah, and on the website there is a comparison page, so that's what I'd recommend you looking. And speaking about the website as well, if you are interested in this, there are a sequence of really cool tutorial videos that go into quite a lot of depth actually on the Steinberg website. So I think anyone who maybe is interested in this, possibly have a look there as well, because it's, as we mentioned, it's so deep.
I mean, it's actually quite a difficult thing to cover, because there's so much stuff in there that you could just go. We could probably spend an hour just talking about the synth engine.
Easily. So absolutely.
Maybe before we go, could we have a look at some of the other skins just to see what they what kind of macro screens you can create for that?
Yeah, sure. So we'd come into this. I would need to then choose a skin. Choose a module.
What about one of the synths? There's a volt, isn't there? So
voltage.
Voltage, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So we'll just pick a pad there, and then call up the macro.
Right. So this is an example of what you can create in the macro editor.
Yeah.
I mean, these are obviously professionally done ones for this, but you can create this kind of stuff yourself.
Yeah.
To skin your own stuff. So
and then you look in the right-hand side here for this particular patch. What's quite nice.
Nice match.
Oh yeah, they sound good together, don't they?
Anyway, I don't know.
So that particular patch, as an example now, if we were to look in the right-hand side, look, we can start to hack it open and have a look at what the constitute, what it's made up of, and you can get right down. And if you like that patch but wanted to edit it,
and there is a library of kind of generic macro objects, so that you don't have to start with the kind of designing your own knob or fader or whatever. We're probably getting a little bit deep on this.
That's right. That's right.
But if you, like I say, as Gaz says, if you want to find out more about it, do check the Steinberg website, because it goes right in if you want to. So I mean, it's one of those things that perhaps you might not use every day in your creative life, unless you want to get into content creation and get that deep. But it is an incredibly deep instrument, and the price differential, I would say I'd spend the 80 quid and extra 80 quid and get HALion Sonic 6.
I think HALion Sonic 3, did we mention that was £201?
Yes, it's about 80 quid difference. But I mean, the thing is, if you create any patches or any custom stuff, you could always kind of go, oh, you know what, I might be able to export that as a library, and you've got it there, and you can just do it. Or I suppose you could then upgrade and
So,
okay, well, that's kind of it. Thanks very much for watching. We'll see you next time.
yeah, ace, bye.